Hey up, I'm Nathan Human and this is episode 14 of the Biscuit Reviews. This episode, two murder mysteries that couldn't be more different in style and tone and setting, as I swap from Jane Isaac's detailed police procedural The Lies Within set in Leicestershire, in an area I know quite well, to The End of the World for Stuart Turton's imaginative murder mystery set on a remote island. And that's where we start, with The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton. Not only did I love this book, but it also made me ever so slightly mad that I'd not heard of the author before. The writing and the themes and the story are so bullseye centre of my interests that I immediately sought out his other books. At some point in Earth's future, a deadly fog has swept the Earth and scientists on a small island have managed to construct a barrier to keep the fog at bay. As far as we know, they are the last people on Earth. The small island is self-sufficient, with a small group of elders leading the 122 residents of the island. We get the impression that technology had advanced in this world before the global catastrophe occurred, and the biggest reveal is that all the residents have an AI in their head that talks to them and can report on what they're doing and where they are. This is presented as kind of a comforting security system, but which immediately sounds terrifying and should hopefully trigger some security system of our own that all is not well or normal in this community. While most of the island's villagers are compliant and willing to follow orders, Emery is stubborn and curious, and after the death of her husband, her uncompromising nature has driven her daughter away. But the two will be united in a single goal, when the island's leader is found murdered. And a dead man's switch is triggered, meaning that unless the murder is solved within 107 hours, the island's defences will be lowered and the deadly fog will engulf them all. The investigation is complicated by the many mysteries that the island is hiding, especially at the top of the mountain where the cable cars go, and by the AI that wiped everyone's memory of the night of the murder, which means that anyone could be the murderer without knowing it. Kind of like those nights when you have sort of a drunken party and no one can remember who took the last Jaffa cake. I mean, it could be you. You do quite like a Jaffa cake, especially when quite tipsy, but you just can't remember. This sense of unease and foreboding builds on numerous questions that we have about this community. Who are these peculiar islanders with their shorter lives and unusual childhoods? What's over at the lighthouse? And what happened to the people who used to live here? The story progresses, with most of it told in first person by the AI, Abby, but it also swaps to third person for some other sections. I can absolutely see how this, and some of the blunt and detailed exposition, could put some readers off. And yeah, I find it hard to disagree with anyone who found elements of the moralising about the wretched fallibility of the human race a tad on the nose. But I thought it fit the unique characters and society that had been lovingly established in the early part of the book. Plus, you know what, I'm a bit of a sucker for on-the-nose, wretched fallibility of the human race moralising because, I'm a fan of the West Wing. This book is nominally sci-fi, if you really had to put it in one section. However, I passed it on to my sci-fi skeptic brother and he loved it. It also has a fantasy element in terms of the world it builds, but it is most definitely a murder mystery, with one of the most unusual lead detectives that you will have the pleasure to follow along. Emery is dogged and curious, and her more straight-laced rule-following daughter Clara provides an interesting contrast as their investigation weaves and bobs and lifts the lid on secrets and delivers plenty of entertainment and shocks. A few times I felt a little bit smug with my own clue following, only to then be totally blindsided by a twist I did not see at all. Alongside the unusual murder mystery, there is also a steady stream of clever and interesting inventions, such as how the island maintains an equilibrium in terms of the population and food supplies. Never judge a book by its cover is frequently a phrase that irritates me. Well, actually, most sayings do, to be honest. And in the case of The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton, I would say it's also one of those times where such a phrase is insulting to the cover designer David Mann. The eye-catching cover is what drew me to this book as I perused the shelves and displays of Kibworth Bookshop, determined to try a new author and something I'd not heard of before. And I am so glad I did, as I've discovered a book that I'm looking forward to sharing and an author I shall definitely be following. This book was tremendous fun, and therefore my biscuit rating is a Cadbury Milka Chocker Moo, a unique, comforting and delightful treat. For anyone who prefers to have their regular podcast shows to listen to, I can only apologise for the thus far scatty release schedule of the Biscuit Reviews. But 2025 is shaping up to be more reliable, and I already have a raft of episodes recorded, so for the next couple of months we'll be having a new episode pretty much every week. I say pretty much just in case something goes wrong. As social media seems to be getting more fragmented and people move to greener pastures and bluer skies, the simplest way to keep up to date with the latest news and episodes is to sign up to the new free newsletter at thebiscuitreviews.co.uk. I promise I won't spam you, and you'll never get more than one email a week. They're also going to be super brief and light on the waffle. You might also be one of the random winners of the prize each month too. In Jane Isaac's The Lies Within, a murder with a similar MO to recent cases in the Midlands puts Detective Inspector Will Jackman on the case. This superbly crafted detective thriller goes for realism and drama in focusing on the victim's mother, and it's all the better for it in my opinion, in a whodunit that is also an aching portrayal of grief. I have to confess to being something of a sucker for the detective gimmick, and my viewing history is filled with a whole host of TV detectives who have amnesia or a special sense of smell or vision or hearing, an ability to notice things or gain people's confidence, or that have been through trauma or have a slightly dubiously depicted neurodivergence. So it was quite refreshing to land on Detective Inspector Will Jackman, who generally escapes pretty much all of these and, apart from a heightened sense of duty and a love of his dog, doesn't display any wayward personality traits. You know what I mean, the type of traits that if someone displayed them on a first date, you'd start texting your mates about the prearranged escape plan. Right, I have no idea if that still happens. My data set for this scenario is significantly out of date. In rural Leicestershire on the road to Market Harbour, a body has been found in the early hours by the roadside. DI Will Jackman is due to head back home to Warwickshire, but after being the duty inspector at the time, he then stays on when he thinks it might be related to a case of his from the year before. What's immediately clear in this book is that author Jane Isaac is not going to rely on gimmicks or outrageous events to grab your attention. Instead, with a fastidious approach that could well serve any real detectives, she carefully constructs a forensically detailed police procedural and weaves in a well-crafted character study of grief. The young victim is Jo, a female student at Nottingham University whose remarried mum and her sister live with her stepdad in Market Harbour. There are very few clues at the beginning. There's nothing that stands out about her or her family, and there are no big dramatic reveals early on. But it is deftly compelling and at times achingly realistic as we centre on Grace, Jo's mum, and her painful struggle with the grief. As happens all too often in real life, there is slow progress from the police, and their updates become sparse and more sporadic. Grace cannot accept this, and she needs to find out what happened to her daughter. As she delves a little deeper, the secrets and lies of her ordinary life begin to be revealed. The focus on the victim's mother is one aspect that makes this stand out, along with the spectacularly ordinary lead detective, whose main virtue is, well, being a thoroughly decent man. Although, to be fair, that probably does mark him out as being very different. The characters here are wonderfully drawn, and the real locations, such as the Three Swans Hotel and Pub in Market Harbour, combine to give this a real true crime flavour. There are enough potential suspects to keep amateur sleuths engaged, and if, like me, your suspicion is sort of right, I'll be amazed if you get an inkling of what the full picture is before the dramatic dash to a conclusion. When thinking about my biscuit rating, I thought, it's another local book, I'm going to have to go for another local biscuit. So as the Jacob's Biscuit Factory was down the road from me, my biscuit rating for The Lies Within is a Jacob Cracker selection. As this book is a bit of a cracker, and although that's cheesy, I would quite like some cheese and biscuits the next time I read a Jane Isaac book. Again, thanks to the ace staff at Kibworth Books for this one, as I asked for any local authors to read and they picked out this one. Cheers! And you might be listening thinking, hey, that bookshop sounds grand, but I'm nowhere near Kibworth in Leicestershire. Don't know why I went northern then. But don't be sad, because you can order online at kibworthbooks.com. The link is in the show notes to this episode and on the website at thebiscuitreviews.co.uk, where you can also find written reviews for both of these books and all past episodes. And whilst you're there, why not sign up for the free newsletter to be alerted about new episodes and the latest updates? If you do have time to leave a review wherever you get your podcasts, that would be great. And if you enjoyed listening, feel free to recommend this show to a friend. And if you didn't, well, feel free to recommend it to someone you don't like. That's all for now. I'm off for a brew and a bicky. Until next time, ta-ra.